Hello, this is Dylan Moore with I Read a TV with a follow-up idea from a previous video talking about intention in the rapture, which was a follow-up on a 3-part presentation that I released on intellectual self-defense, where I spoke at length about intention, and for the sake of this conversation, maybe we'll call it the fallacy of intention. And my cohort Nima, who, if you peruse our video library, you will most certainly find, gave it a listen, and he brought up an interesting idea to me about just how evil an appeal to intention can be. Now, I'm going to work my way up to this idea because, you got to have a little bit of background of the other videos, if you haven't seen them, of what I'm talking about here. So, in my intellectual self-defense series, in part 3, and actually all 3 parts, I talk about this at some level, but in part 3, I really emphasize why an appeal to intention is manipulative. And what I mean by that is there's 3 ways we can judge an action. We can judge an action by the intention that somebody had when they did the action, by what they accomplished, or the ends of the action, or the means by which the action was done. Now, it doesn't take a whole lot of mental gymnastics to figure out that the only correct way to judge actions are by the means that people took. And when we look at ends, for example, if we were to judge actions by ends, someone would always be able to accomplish their responsibility away, right? And I mean, I don't know if famous is the right word, but I think it's familiar to a lot of people, this example, to say, well, I know I treated you very poorly as a child, but you turned out great. See? So it wasn't all that bad what I did. And this would be an example of an appeal to ends to judge actions in order to skirt around responsibility. Because that's the key here, right? Is if I can appeal to ends or I can appeal to intention, I'm able to skirt around my responsibility. Whereas if judgment is based on the means that somebody took, I'm always responsible for my actions. Now, the reason that intention skirts around responsibility is you could just intend your responsibility away. Well, I know I did that, but I didn't mean it. I did that, but I was intending to do something good. Oh, I know I did that, but I was trying to be polite. Whatever. It's all about skirting around responsibility. And my premise here is that anybody who attempts to skirt around their own personal responsibility, what they're actually doing is they're trying to manipulate the other person. You have your personal responsibility over your actions. So if I try to appeal to intention, it's manipulative. So if I was supposed to do something, or I did something that the other person doesn't like, that was harmful to another person, and I just get around with, I try to get away with, oh, I didn't mean it, I'm still responsible for what I did. However, what I'm doing is trying to convince the other person to not hold me responsible for what I did. And my premise is that's manipulative. That is manipulative, sophist bullshit. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. That's manipulative, sophisticated, sophistry bullshit. So I made that point in my intellectual self-defense show, and I made 2 shows criticizing the concept of the rapture, because the rapture is a glorified theological angle for an appeal to intention. I have accepted Jesus in my mind, therefore my actions are now irrelevant because I am on the good team. I'm going to be raptured off, so when all the bad things start happening on earth, I don't have to deal with it, so it ain't my problem here no more. I'm no longer responsible for my actions. I'm no longer responsible to do certain things within this world, even though I have a supposedly Christian mindset. I just have to make a mental switch in my mind, and I don't have to participate in all the evil that's going to come around at any time now. So I argue that what a worldview or a religious view like that does is it's basically this glorified appeal to intention in order to get people to not hold you responsible for your actions so you can be lazy. So you can be lazy and a coward. And in particular, the appeal to intention, and I talk about this specifically in the intellectual self-defense presentation, is, I think, the most lazy, cowardly, armchair quarterback version of manipulation, because it's like this magic spell that you can sit back in your chair and just wave off whatever your responsibility is and just go, oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I mean, at least with the appeal to ends, theoretically, you have to accomplish something, right? Like, yes, I did this really horrible thing to you, but look at the thing that look at the thing that I accomplished. Well, I mean, that's manipulative and that's wrong, but at least, like, you did something, you did some work. Appeal to intention, you just, yeah, it's just so lazy and disgusting. So Nima listens to the stuff that I make, and we have this conversation, and he tells me, you know, I was thinking about the appeal to intention, and a great evil rides on this excuse. And I well, Nima, tell me more. What do you mean? And he said, for example. Now, I got to be careful when I say this now. It's going on YouTube. I don't even know it's censored anymore. For the Big 9 and the Big 1-1, the Patriot Act comes out, and, we intend to keep you safe with this. After the most horrible disease that ever hit the face of the earth, right, that was saved by the most amazing medicine that was ever hit the face of the earth. Everything that was done was, we are doing this for your health. We are intending to do this for your health. We are doing to do this for your health. We're trying to keep you safe. We're trying to keep you safe. And he points out, as he says, there are no metrics, right? There's no follow-up. It's just this constant appeal to attention. Everything that we roll out is, here's societal wide massive changes and completely revoking legal concepts that have been there to protect us for hundreds of years or even thousands of years, depending on how far back you want to go into Western civilization. All that goes out because we're appealing to the intention that we're trying to do something good to help you. And in this conversation, I'm like, Nima, you are goddamn right. You're goddamn right, because I didn't even address that in my intellectual self-defense course. Is that it's not only so manipulative, it's like this. How do I want to put it? It's like this cart that all this horrible, evil, manipulative stuff can be put on in order to bring it over to you en masse. It's this truck, it's this container ship that we could fit so much evil on this because people will just buy it because we intended. And then after the fact, you say, okay, well, here's what actually happened, right? Okay, Patriot Act was supposed to keep us safe. Oh yeah, it turned into this apparatus that spies on all of us. Basically revokes the First Amendment, revokes more specifically revokes the Fourth Amendment, right to privacy, basically, and which subsequently revokes the First Amendment because, you said this certain thing, so we're going to jump on top of you, we're going to throw you in jail, we're going to call you a domestic terrorist, which leads into the next thing, this whole thing about, we need this to fight the terrorists over there. Oh, by the way, there's domestic terrorists here that are connected to those terrorists over there, and oh, by the way, we don't even care about the terrorists over there anymore, we're just concerned about the domestic terrorists here. But we've intended, every step of the way is carried on an appeal to intention, and every attempt to assess, looking in the background and say, okay, how did this work out? What did you accomplish? How did you measure? How do you look at the results and compare to the original intention in order to gauge what's going on moving forward? That's just irrelevant. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just this constant appeal to intention, moving forward and forward and forward and forward. And I wanted to make this video, first of all, to elaborate on that idea because I think it's a very fascinating idea. But furthermore, to connect it to what I argue with the my case on intellectual self-defense, my angle on intellectual self-defense, is that whenever I have in private conversation talked about my theory on intellectual self-defense, and if I can summarize it as quickly as possible, it's like this. We have the capability of interacting with each other in a win-win interaction, which uses our ability to reason, uses logic. We have the ability to communicate on that level. We also have the ability to communicate on another level where I'm trying to dominate you in order to get you to do what I want, or you're trying to dominate me in order to get me to do what you want. And on that level, it could be obvious where I can come up and shove you against the wall and say, hey, motherfucker, give me your lunch money. Right, or give me your wallet or whatever. I'm gonna give you commands and you need to do as I say, and I'm just gonna be a gorilla about it or whatever by overarchingly being obviously alpha or something. That's one way to be dominant, and that's very obvious. There's another way to be dominant, which is very, very, very sneaky, and it's called sophistry. It's called manipulation, where I pretend that I'm utilizing logic, but because I've committed fallacies, I'm not actually using logic. I'm not actually using reason. So if I'm not using reason and I'm not using logic, like, well, what else could I be doing? I mean, think about it. If I want you to do something and I give you a good reason and you're like, you know what, that's a good reason, and because it's a good reason, I'll do it. You just convince somebody utilizing your reasonable, rational capacity, right? If I convince you through not that, well, what else could it be? It would be a form of domination. It would be a form of manipulation. Now, I don't think that's for some people that's a new idea, but for a lot of people that's kind of an old idea. This is what I believe is the new idea that I'm putting forth here that people don't seem to get. Is if somebody's on the I want to have a discussion and be reasonable circuit, right? And somebody else is on the I want to dominate circuit, even if it looks like it's reasonable, right? Even if the guy's pretending to be reasonable. If these two things come into conflict, the dominant circuit wins. The person on the I'm trying to dominate you circuit wins by default. There's no contest. There's no battle. It's that the person who's trying to be reasonable, his efforts simply evaporate. They vaporize. It does absolutely nothing. Zero. To the fact that the other guy is in a dominate-submit interaction. Now, another way to say this is there's win-win and then there's a win-lose interaction. So if win-win meets win-lose, I'm trying to talk to win-win, you're trying to talk win-lose, we are having a win-lose conversation no matter how hard I try to be on win-win. No matter how hard I try to be on win-win, it doesn't matter, I'm on win-lose. And if the other guy's trying to win and trying to have me lose and I'm trying to be win-win, well, I'm accepting losing by default. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, even if it doesn't make sense, go try it. You'll find out really quickly. Now, I've got this whole 6-hour presentation on that in 3 separate parts, really breaking that down, how to understand it, how to utilize it, how to really see every aspect of it. And as I was developing these ideas, when I would tell them to people or bounce the ideas off of people, the number one criticism that always came back, not always came back, but it was at the highest potential of coming back, was, well, what if the other person who's engaging in this behavior that you're describing, Dylan, what if they didn't mean it? What if they didn't intend to do that to you? What if they didn't intend to manipulate you? And to me now, this is so clear, is that it doesn't matter. I mean, let's say I'm playing with a gun and I negligently discharge it and it hits you. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean it. I didn't intend to do that. Well, you still have a bullet in you, or you're still dead. Right? Whether the intention was there or not, the action hath occurred. You are still having to deal with the result. And the point that I harp on, and I say this unapologetically, without any hesitation, is it doesn't matter if the person doesn't intend it. I mean, first of all, you can never really tell if that's true, right? Because if someone said, well, I didn't mean it, like, how are you going to get in their head and find out what their intention was? But it doesn't matter. You still have to deal with the consequences of that intention happening. Now, one of the reasons I believe that this gets difficult, it's not difficult for me, but why people have a difficult time with this is the intention of the person can change how you deal with it. So going back to I'm being silly with the gun and I discharge it and it shoots you in the shoulder, and you're like, oh my God, you shot me in the shoulder. If I really didn't intend that, I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to be like, oh my God, I got to be careful with this gun. I can't believe I shot you in the shoulder. What can I do to help you? Get you to the hospital, help pay for your medical bill, right? That is entirely different from, okay, I shot you in the shoulder, bam, or I shot you and killed you, and okay, I'm in a trial and I'm being prosecuted for murder or whatever, and I'm like, oh, but I didn't mean it. Oh, that I didn't mean it. Oh, but I didn't mean it. Nah, that doesn't change that you did it. That does not change that you did it. It does change what the strategy is to respond to it, and I think in the realm of law, which is, I guess, this example that I'm talking about here, the intention is relevant to the future risk. If I really didn't intend to do it, let's say let's say I kill you and it turns out to be manslaughter. Sure, there's a punishment for that, but the punishment for murder is greater than the punishment for manslaughter. Well, why would there be a difference? I think the reason is that the person who committed manslaughter, when released back into the community, has a lower risk of doing it again because he didn't mean it. He's going to change his behavior in order to avoid doing that in the future, whereas the person who committed the murder, especially if it was like premeditated, right? That's why there's like first, second, and third degree murder. Like if you premeditate and act out on a murder, you really meant it. You really freaking meant it, right? Which means you're a greater danger to the society if we let you out, so it needs a greater penalty. So similar to that, let's say someone is manipulating me and they don't intend it, and I point it out to them and I say, hey, here's the reason why what you're doing is manipulative, and they go, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was doing that. I'm sorry, let me change. Well, that might be how you deal with it. The guy really didn't intend it. That might be how you deal with it. Now, if the person does intend it, are they going to change their behavior? And if you keep bringing it up to them and you say, hey, you're doing this to me and it's kind of manipulative, I would like it if you just stop. And if they just keep saying, oh, I didn't mean it, oh, I didn't mean it, oh, I didn't mean it, and they keep doing it, I mean, at some point they mean it, right? At some point it's just BS. But if they don't make any effort to change their behavior, I need to change my strategy for dealing with you. Does that make sense? I need it, so it doesn't change that it's being done, but it does change my strategy for dealing with it. Now, I'm just hypothesizing here, right? The open question is if people, at some subconscious level understand this, even if they've never articulated it in the way that I just did, they're confusing that there is a scale of punishment depending on intention, with the fact that whether or not someone intended to do it doesn't change the fact that it happened. And because it happened, the person is responsible for the action. Intention does not change your responsibility for an action. It does potentially change how someone should deal with it. You follow me on that? Intention does zero. It does nothing. It does absolutely zero, flat-ass nothing for changing the responsibility of an action. You did it. There are consequences to what you've done. The fact that you didn't mean it does not change that. Reality has occurred, right? The action's done. We can't go back in time. We can't change it. You did it. You're responsible. Now, depending on your intention, which Also, I guess another component of this is depending on what your change or not change in behavior is, that changes how other people need to hold you responsible, how other people need to strategize about dealing with your behavior. So regardless of the reason why people have such this soft spot for intention, and maybe it's because if appeal to attention is not valid, that means I can't make appeals to attention anymore, right? Like, okay, this guy's using this armchair quarterback manipulative move against me, which I don't like. However, if I challenge the concept of that means I can't use that armchair quarterback manipulative move anymore. I wonder how much that might have to do with the fact that people allow this appeal to intention to just fly rampant. So whatever the reason that humans seem to have this soft spot for an appeal to intention, going back to what this conversation I had with Nima about, is it's this totally exploitable weakness in people that all this evil can get shoved down their throat in the name of intention. All this evil can get shoved down your throat in the name of intention, and people just roll over and die. Be like, oh, they're intending well, so it must be good. And there's no attempt at follow-up. Okay, you intended X. Did you achieve X? Right? Here's this great thing that you wanted to do. Okay, it didn't achieve X. It actually achieved something pretty bad. And then I want to come back to you and talk about it, and you go, oh, I intended otherwise. I intended good things, and oh, okay, he intended good things. The organization, the person intended good things. Now, so I hope I made my point clear on this, but the reason I'm making the video, A, it's interesting, but B, is to start inoculating people. Ooh, I used a vaccine reference. Start inoculating people against this poison. Is that do not fall for appeals to intention. Now, it's really easy to turn this into societal-wide ideas, and I brought up several societal-wide ideas, but it has to start with your personal relationships. It has to start with your personal relationships, because if you have a personal relationship where you are manipulated through a method such as this, you will continue to be manipulated from a method coming from an outside source. Why? Why would that be the case? Because this is like a personality switch. If you were to have the gumption to say, okay, here's this appeal intention to coming to me, I'm going to reorient my character to resist that. And you're going to walk back into your personal relationship, and you're going to have to make a choice of, okay, do I resist this in this personal relationship? And if you choose no, well, your character just reverted back to the way it was, and you're not going to be able to stand up to the societal-wide problem. And this becomes scary because most people don't realize you have a lot of very manipulative, parasitic relationships in your life. And they could be family, they could be friends, they could be coworkers, church, whatever. You have all these manipulative relationships in your life. And when you start to challenge these people, and ask me why I know this, right? I went through this. When you start to challenge these people, some of them will not, for any reason, they would rather die than change their behavior and treat you better. And at that point, now you got an even greater responsibility. Talking about responsibility here. At that point, you're responsible for getting out of the relationship. And do you have the courage for that? See what I'm saying? Do you have the courage for that? And if you don't have the courage for that, when that interaction happens, you'll never have the courage for something greater than that. So until you can get my argument is at least, until you can get your personal relationships figured out, who's manipulating me and who isn't, then, forget the societal stuff. And you might ask, well, Dylan, why are you talking about the societal stuff? Because, let me tell you, people who are smart, and you got to be a little bit smart to understand this concept, right? People who are smart, they want to solve societal problems. Their mind immediately goes to solving societal problems. Because people who are smart, I mean, this is kind of related to test taking. You know, you get a good grade in a test, you get an A, you get emotional satisfaction, but it's nothing. It leads to nothing. It doesn't do anything, right? I mean, this is a tragedy or one of the tragedies of the modern educational system, right? The test shows like absolutely nothing for someone's future prospects of what they're going to do with their life. So similarly, if you can solve all the world's problems in your mind, but you can't actualize anything in your immediate experience, well, then you're just wasting your time. You're just a talker. You don't do anything. So zoom this in. If you're still listening to this, I hope you take this to heart, because that's one of the points of the show. I'm not here to, here's some grand ideas that may impress your brain and give you that hit on your knowledge addiction. I'm not here for that. I'm here for you to give you information for you to take and use in your own life to improve your own life, to improve what's going on in the world. And we got to start that with our own lives. So inoculating people against the appeal to attention, I think, is so vitally important. I mean, I think that there's a lot of different things to inoculate against, but two parts. My first part being my own personal pet peeve, as this is like my most irritating strategy of the sophist, the most irritating strategy of the manipulator is to appeal to intention. As Nima pointed out to me, that I didn't even think about it this way, is that this is like the bullet train, the tanker that can carry all this evil into your life, and you just roll over and die because they appealed to intention. If you want to learn more about intellectual self-defense, and you want to learn more about how people utilize responsibility or manipulate responsibility in order to manipulate others, and how to defend yourself against it and how to identify it, go listen to my 3-part series on intellectual self-defense. Your mind will be blown. You won't see the world in the same way. And let me know how that goes. But this has been a zoomed-in, tiny little piece of that entire presentation. So I hope you enjoyed it. This has been Dylan Moore with iReadIt TV, which you can find at iReadIt.tv. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.